correct?
Mhm.
So she is going to just present some things, and she'll kind of let you know how she wants you to proceed if you've got questions or anything like that. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Kiri. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and letting us know about the FAFSA. She is, like I said, a wealth of knowledge.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much for the invitation too. I had had a chance to be at your high school a couple of times and just love the interactions that I've had with students and parents. So it's great to be back even in this virtual environment. So what we're going to do tonight is talk a little bit about a couple of things in addition to the FAFSA. So we want to talk about what financial aid is in general. So when we talk about financial aid, when you're applying for financial aid, what does that mean? What is it that I'm actually applying for? We'll go over what the FAFSA is, what's the free application for federal student aid. And we're going to talk about some of the really important kind of pieces of that and give you a sense of when you should be doing what in the process so that you're on track to get a financial aid award for the institutions that you're considering as you're looking for your college home. We'll talk about the financial aid types. So not only what is financial aid, but what kinds of things make up financial aid. What's the difference between a grant or a loan or a scholarship, work study? So we'll go through those. We'll talk about special circumstances. And especially with this year, a lot has changed for a lot of families. So what does that mean when you fill out a FAFSA and then things change dramatically? So we'll talk through that. And then we'll have some time for Q&A, for questions and answers at the end. We don't have a chat function, so what we're going to do is just have you raise hands at the end and we can take your questions then. So I'll kind of buzz through this. It's being recorded. I'll share the PowerPoint as well so that you can have access to the links and everything in the PowerPoint. But I want to just give you kind of an overview as we get started. So financial aid, the hope is that it's a collaborative partnership and that it's between the government, the university, and then students and family. So there's 3 components, and each component has their own role in that they play in helping come up with a financial aid award for the students. So first, we'll talk about the government. So the government is where you're going to complete, again, that FAFSA, and they're going to come up with, and we'll talk more in detail about this, what your estimated family contribution is. And that will then be the index that they'll use to determine if you can have, if you can access federal or state grants and student loans. So that's the government's role. Then the student and family's role, complete that FAFSA. So they can't, the government can't give you access to work study, to loan grants, unless you complete that FAFSA. So it's really important that you do that. And then also students can apply for outside scholarships. So as you look at the scholarships that might be available in your community, in the metro area, through different organizations that you or your be involved in, there are ways that you can bring additional scholarships to whatever institution you might enroll. And then the university, the role that we have to look at the FAFSA to determine what your eligibility is for a couple of different types of aid. So with the university, we're going to look at merit scholarships. So, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means. We're going to create a personalized financial aid award based on what you have provided with the FAFSA, based on your application for admission. And then our job is to make the financial aid award goes with you, not just in your first year, but throughout your whole college experience. So it's a 3-way partnership. So awesome to see so many people. Yes, it's great. So the goal of financial aid is students and families in paying for their educational investment. This is an important piece, right? The investment, because college is expensive. When you think about the types of the big purchases you're in your lifetime, for some, the college experience is going to be in the top 2 or 3 expenses that you'll have. Again, depending on what type of aid, what school you attend, but it is a big investment, and it's an investment that will pay back, right, in the long run. So we know that students with college degrees, whether that be a community college, a 2-year or a 4-year, or a degree, are much more likely to be employed and to stay employed, even in times like what we're experiencing today with so much unrest with the pandemic, the recession. So the goal, and it's achieved by, we're evaluating your family's ability to pay. We're going to look at the university, our resources. So we would love to have a blank check, or we could just give everyone every dollar that they need in order to make it affordable. Unfortunately, we don't have access to the money trees. So we have to think about how we're going to allocate what resources we do have in an equitable manner so that everyone knows how to access them and that it's in how we're offering our aid. And then we're going to look at how we provide a balance of gift and self-help. So we're going to talk about what those two things are so that it's clear to you if it's money that you need to pay back, money that you get and don't have to pay back, what the differences are. All right, so we're going to jump into the FAFSA, which is, again, that free application for federal student aid. A couple of important tips here. You'll see at the bottom the application here, the website. If you Google FAFSA, you just want to make sure that you're on the .ed.gov website, because if you Google FAFSA, there are sometimes companies that are like, ooh, I will say that you can apply for the FAFSA here, but they charge you for it. Shouldn't have to pay for the FAFSA, it's free application. So you just want to make sure that you're on the gov site, the .ed.gov site. So this one is actually to create your ID, which is basically your PIN number. And so when you go to this site down here, the FSAID, you're going to create your unique identification number that allows you to sign your application for federal aid. So as a student, you need to be able to sign it, and then at least one parent needs to be able to sign it. So if you have, if you're a parent and your son or daughter, or you have a who's gone through the college search process, or if you've done it yourself and you already have a PIN number, you don't need to do it again. It's your PIN number for life. But if you've never done this process before, both parent and student complete this process. You can do this anytime. It does take a little bit of time to get the information back, and that you do this, you know, at least a few days in advance to complete the FAFSA. So if you're a junior, you can do this now. Your parent can do this now. If you're a senior and you haven't started with the FAFSA, I would recommend doing this sooner rather than later, just so you don't have any kind of delay when you're trying to complete the FAFSA. So when you're creating this, again, you're going to this website and you're filling out the information, and they're wanting to make sure that you, A, are not in the system anywhere else, and then B, when they give you that PIN, that it's you. So they're going to ask you for some additional information so that basically they know it's you and that you're going to use that forever. So good thumb, write it all down. So keep your information in where you have your ID, your information number, you have your login information, your password, because when if you lose it, it takes a little bit of work to get it, you know, to reactivate it or to be able to get that PIN because it's so protected. So talked enough about that, but that's the first step, getting your PIN for both student and for parent. Then you're going to actually go to the application itself, which is at the FAFSA.gov site. So that's there. And you're going to complete the FAFSA in your senior year. So a couple of things changed. If you yourself as a parent went to school a few years back, or if you have a sibling that went maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago now, you would apply for financial aid in January, not in October, and you would use the information from the current calendar year. Now what we do is use what we call the prior year. So students that are applying to start in college for next fall, so 2021, you will actually use your 2019, the prior year's taxes to complete the FAFSA. So that gives students and parents a little bit of flexibility so that you don't have to wait, get your taxes done, and then quickly turn around and fill out the FAFSA. You can use the information that we've already submitted for our taxes for the 2021 academic year. So the FAFSA did open on October 1st for the 2021 school year. If you're a junior, it will open on October 1st next year for you. So it's always on October 1st, which is my birthday. That's how I keep it in mind. I remember it from year to year. So the first time you fill out the FAFSA, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. We're going to kind of walk through that. It gets easier. You do need to renew it every year that you stay in school, but it's a little bit easier process where you're updating it for your sophomore, junior, senior year of college. And so the first time you do it, it can take a little bit more time just because it's new and you're trying to figure it all out, and then it gets faster with each subsequent year. The other thing I will say is a mistake that I made is every year that you fill it out, you are new to the FAFSA. You're going to start. So even if you completed the FAFSA, let's say now you're a sophomore, you're going back to school, back to college in the fall, you user is only if you started the FAFSA for the upcoming year. It's not if you're a returning student. Okay, so that's that. I feel like that language can be a little confusing. All right, keep moving here. So the documents you need to fill out the FAFSA. So this is sometimes the biggest piece is that, and that takes the most time, is that you sit down to fill it out and then you're like, oh, I need my taxes, or oh, I forgot about. So it's having all the right information in front of you when you sit down to fill it out helps tremendously so that it speeds up the process and helps you feel more informed along the way. So the documents are the social security number for the parent and the student, or this terminology, the alien registration number or your permanent resident card. So one of those identifiers will be needed to complete the FAFSA. We're going to talk a little bit about the DREAM Act at the end. So if you're wondering about that, we'll cover that too as we get closer to the end of the presentation. So you need that again for both parent and student. Federal income tax information for both student and parent if the student completed income tax. If they didn't complete income taxes, don't worry about it. And then records of untaxed income that are listed here. And then also and asset information. So we're going to talk a little bit about these pieces as we go through the presentation. So when you put all that together, you can start working on the FAFSA. You can also use the data retrieval tool, which we'll talk about in a minute. So one of the big questions that people have is, who counts in my house? So you don't have to count your pets. So if this is your family down below, what you're going to do, the household size is the number of people the parents provide more than 50% of financial support to. And then the number of college, a number in college does not include parents. So if you are going to school, perhaps at Metro State, that does not count when you fill out the FAFSA. You can fill out a special circumstance later. Again, we'll talk about that, but it does not count when you're filling out the FAFSA itself. So sometimes with families or with guardianship, people say, ooh, which parent or which guardian fills this out? It's the one that's providing more than 50% of financial support. If it's half and half, we'll talk a little bit about that too, of who fills that out. So more information to come with all this. Then, the other thing you need to think about is, who do I want to send my results to? What colleges or universities do I want to have receive this information so they can provide me with a financial aid award? So you can enter up to 10. The good news here is you do not have to enter all 10 right now when you're filling out the FAFSA. If you've already filled it out and you're now thinking, oh, maybe I want to look at the University of Minnesota and that wasn't on my initial list, or ooh, I just got a letter from UMD and that would be cool, you can go back in and add up to 10 codes. So it is something that you don't have to know right away, but if you have some schools in mind, go ahead and fill them out, and you can just use the search function to do that. And then they're going to ask you if you're planning to live on campus or not for each institution. So because if you're applying locally, you might not want to live on campus, but if you're applying outstate, you would want to live on campus. So that's why they're asking for each school. So again, up to 10, and you can go back and you can add later. So a couple of things here just to note, that there's the parent and the student information. So there's tabs for both. So you are going to be completing for both the student and for the parent. So just keep that in mind when you're filling out the tab. If you're like, who is this about again? Just look up to the top and see what you're completing under what section. So these are just a couple tips as we go through the process. Sometimes we're asked, well, what if I am an independent student? What is that? Or what if I want to apply as an individual because I don't have, my parents aren't in the picture or they're not supporting me? So the government has some pretty strict guidelines about what an independent applicant is. So they're listed here. So it's typically about age. So you have to be 24 or older, graduate or professional. That typically won't be someone right out of high school because it has to be someone with a college degree. Married. So if you're married, you can be independent, but a cultural marriage does not count towards the marriage. So it has to be, you have the license there. Legal dependents other than spouse who receive more than 1/2 of their support from the student. So if you have a dependent, whether it be your own child or a sibling that you're responsible for, and you provide at least 1/2 of the support, then you can be considered independent. Another is any time since 13 years old that you were or are an orphan in foster care or ward of the court. Or if you're an active duty or veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces, if you're an emancipated minor, or in legal guardianship as determined by the court. So this is someone other than your parent. Or an unaccompanied homeless youth as documented by an authorized official. So again, the government has said these are the things that will allow you to submit the FAFSA with just your information, not with the parent's information. So it's pretty strict. And if one of these criteria meets you or matches you, then you'll be able to fill that out as a student. If you have questions about that, let us know at either the university that you're applying to, or you could certainly talk with your career college counselor to kind of learn more about if you qualify. So there are lots of people that can help you with that process. If you're kind of wondering, does that mean me? Just ask. All right, so for the parent information, dependent students must provide parent information on the FAFSA. Again, if you don't qualify as an independent, you have to provide both student and parent information. Now, let's say that's great in theory, but my parent is not available. I don't see them. I'm not able to get a hold of them. They're not responding to my requests. Then you need to talk with the college that you're applying to. Typically, they're going to need some sort of verification of the attempts that you've made to reach out to that parent, that they have some documentation in place before they can override any kind of parent information. So if that's the situation that you find yourself in, again, talk with the college, talk with your admissions counselor. We'll need to have some documentation, but want to work with you in that situation. I will say it can be tough. So sometimes we have students that are having to try and track down a parent that they haven't talked to for a while, that's not super supportive of their college hopes. And so we know that those are really delicate and difficult situations. So again, that's where the college admissions and financial aid professionals can assist you. All right, so one question, who's considered a parent? So I said that we would get to this. So if your parents are married, then both of your parents are going to provide information on the FAFSA. If they are not married, but they're living together, both of your parents are considered parents in the FAFSA. Divorced or separated, the parent you lived with the most during the last 12 months, the parent who provided more than 50% of financial support during the last 12 months. So with that divorced or separated, if you're living separately, then it's one or the other in that space. So you're looking at how much time and how much resources the parent has provided. If your parent is remarried, then it's the parent and the step parent. And if your parent is widowed, then it's just the single parent. Okay, so it can get confusing, right? We have complex families. And so don't be embarrassed if you need to ask, it's okay. I was just talking with a good friend of mine, and she's divorced, and her kids' father just got remarried and for the second time since they were divorced. And she's like, the kids are just kind of overwhelmed as they're trying to describe their family. And yeah, can be really hard. So don't feel embarrassed if you need to ask, like, which person, how does this work? It is fine. Families are complicated, and we've worked with lots of different complicated families in the past. So we probably have experience and can provide some good insights for you. The piece at the bottom, grandparents, foster parents, legal guardians, older brothers or sisters are not considered parents on the FAFSA. Okay, so again, if you've got questions, just let your admissions counselor or your financial aid contact know, and we can help you with that. So as I mentioned, with the FAFSA, you can sit down with all those documents in hand and fill them out, fill out the FAFSA using your taxes and your assets. The other way, which can help simplify things a little bit, is to use the data retrieval tool. So this is something that's available for some folks. It's not available for everyone. We're going to talk about the difference. But with this, basically what they're going to do is ask you for some information from your taxes, from your 2019 taxes. They're going to ask you for some line items along with your information so they can match you to what you've already submitted to the federal government for those taxes. So then, boop, everything just gets pushed over. So that magic, it's that fast, where it populates your FAFSA for you as long as they can find that match in the system. So it's pretty awesome. I highly recommend it if it's something that you're eligible for. So as we look at the data retrieval tool and who can use it, that's the next two slides. First, just so you know, what they're going to ask you for is the income tax, depending on which form you filled out. They're going to ask you for that amount on either line 55, 35, or 10. So basically, again, you're going to want to have your tax information, but once they connect that number to you in their system, it connects then and fills out the rest of the FAFSA that's needed from your taxes. So pretty handy. You'll see down here, it's going to be basically popping up then as transferred from the IRS. So again, pretty nice if it's something that you can utilize. So the items that are populated include the adjusted gross income, your taxes paid, untaxed IRA distributions, etc. So there's quite a bit there. Then you don't have to dig it up on your own taxes and populate it. It's just going to pop in automatically. So who cannot use the IRS data retrieval? So pretty much anyone except the folks on this list. So if you are a parent where you're married and you filed separate tax returns, it's not going to work because they're going to want to pull in that information from both. So you can't do one or just one. So you're going to have to fill out the FAFSA with the information from both of your income taxes. Students' legal parents that are unmarried and living together, same thing. So if you don't file taxes jointly and you are co-parenting this child, living together, all living under the same roof, then you can't do it because they want to have information from both parents. If you filed an amended return, so if you submitted your taxes and then had an amended return, they're going to need to have both. So, and then if you filed in Puerto Rico or a foreign tax return, they can't pull those up either within the system. So for a lot of students, it works, or I should say parents, it works to use this tool, and it does save quite a bit of time. All right, so doing pretty good, looking at the time. We're moving right along. We'll have time for questions, I promise. So parent income information. So the untaxed income that must also be reported. So with the FAFSA, they're going to ask about education credits. So do you have any children that are currently in college where you're getting education credit for that? Or do you have child support that's been paid or received? Is there any taxable combat pay or special combat pay, which if you're in the military, or your parents own student grants or scholarships if reported as a part of the parents' adjusted gross income? So oftentimes these, if you've never heard of this, it's probably not something you need to worry about. It's really like, oh, yep, that fits for me because you've already submitted as part of your information that in the taxes, it's untaxed income, but it's already something that you've pulled together and have information about. So again, if it's something that you have a question about, you can certainly ask us. But some of this is like, yep, I'm not in the military, so I don't have to worry about that one. I don't have other kids in college. I don't have to worry about that one. So, you know, it's usually pretty straightforward. So then you also have to report your assets. So as parents, what is considered an asset? So everything on the top You have to report the net worth, so the value of money markets, mutual funds, trust funds, stocks, CDs, real estate, different accounts. So basically any savings accounts that you might have for education. What you don't report, which is important, is your home. You don't have to report the value of the home that you live in. You don't have to report any retirement accounts. So the government does not expect you to take money out of your retirement account to send your children to school. You also don't have to report the value of your life insurance. The family farm, kind of interesting. You might be like, what? How did that get in there? So they look at different assets, and the family farm has always been considered kind of a unique asset. It's more like the home in that it's really a place that you're living and functioning out of. So it's considered more of that residence than you know, a second property. And then if you own a business with 100 or less full-time employees, you don't have to report that. So if you've got a business with 99, you want to, no, employees, don't go over, just kidding. But as you think about what your assets are, that's a pretty significant list. Then once you fill all of that information out, you're going through it, it's prompting you to answer questions based on how, or it's prompting you to go to the next question based on how you've answered the questions. So it's pretty, you know, straightforward once you get into the FAFSA as you follow through it. You can see again down here how it's kind of asking you these different questions. You're clicking the boxes as you go, and then you get to the sign and submit. So this is where parent and student need to submit using that PIN number typically to sign it. But if you're like, I don't have a PIN, I don't know how to do that, I just want to sign a paper, you can submit a paper signature. But I just want to share that that takes a lot longer for your financial aid award to be processed. So when it's a circumstance that you really can't avoid, that you need to do that signature page, I would do it. But if at all possible, do that electronic signature, because especially now with COVID and processing time and mail, and it's just so much faster to do everything electronically if possible. So we don't want to have people get kind of held up in the process by, you know, having taken a little bit of, or taken a step that they maybe didn't absolutely need to do. So once it all gets submitted, everything signed, student and parent, you have success. You get this screen that says, hey, congratulations, you've submitted your FAFSA, and you get your confirmation number. And then it gives you an EFC, and we're going to talk about what that means, the estimated family contribution. It also lists then the schools that you've put onto your FAFSA. So again, it's giving you kind of a summary sheet of what you've submitted. Also, it will get sent to, and we'll talk about this, where it gets sent to the student email address. So you don't have to worry about like capturing everything when it gets posted. It will get sent electronically as well. But you can print the page just to confirm that it's been submitted and you were successful. All right, so your FAFSA results gets email notification with a link to the student aid report. You will learn in higher education, we love acronyms, we love anything that we can shorten, but then nobody really knows what we're talking about. So like even with FAFSA, like what is that? The free application for federal student aid, the SAR, the student aid report. So you get a link to the student aid report online if the student's email address was provided. A little tip here, we recommend that students use a home email address, because this is an email address that you can use throughout your college experience. So when you are doing it with your high school email, unless you keep that forever, which you probably don't, you're going to want to make sure that you have an email address that's going to be valid throughout your whole college experience, so you don't have to update that in the system. So again, you can return to the FAFSA if you need to make corrections or add schools. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I actually put that we have 5 in my family, but we have 6. How could I have forgotten young Kevin, like in the movie Home Alone? I better go back and add him in. So that's fine. You can make that adjustment. And then the other thing to note is that the FAFSA should be completed with the information as of the date that it's filed. So again, so many things are changing in our lives right now. And so when you submit it with what you know as of that date. don't worry about like, oh, but I don't know, like in a month from now, it might be different, or I'm waiting to hear if I'm going to get a job or promotion, but it might take a few months. Go ahead and submit it so that it's in there. You can always make updates or request special circumstances later. We don't want to, again, halt the process unnecessarily while we wait for things that we could go ahead and submit. So next thing I just want to share is that there is a process called verification. So this happens to approximately 1 out of 3 individuals where they are selected for verification, which basically means, hey, we want to make sure that what you submitted on your taxes and what you submitted in your FAFSA match. So if you are selected for verification, you'll be notified by the institution where you've applied. So interestingly enough, sometimes you're selected for verification at institution A, but not at institution B. Kind of depends on the institution's pool and how random that is. So it's very common for students to get a verification selection at some point in their college career. So I will say though, it's kind of, it's annoying because you have to do some additional steps. So the college or university is going to help you with that, to walk you through that process. Because when you're selected for verification, the institution still wants you to come. It's not anything about that. It's just to say, oh, we got to verify this. So we want to help you through that process so that we can move through the application and admittance and financial aid process just as fast as you do. So the parent and student are going to have to provide official tax information to the school if selected. You might have to provide some additional documentation based on the institution. They'll let you know. But you also need to submit the federal verification worksheets that the school will provide. And then again, some students will need to provide additional citizenship documentation. So the school will walk you through that. Just be aware, again, it's nothing that needs to cause alarm, but it does take some additional steps. And it doesn't reflect bad on your application process or anything. It's just a process that's been added to make sure that we're kind of checking in, make sure that everything's working. All right, so let's talk about that estimated family contribution, or your EFC. So when you fill out the FAFSA, you're gonna get this EFC right away. It's gonna tell you, based on what you've submitted, your estimated family contribution is blank. So it's based on, again, your family's taxed on untaxed income, assets, and benefits. It's also looking at your family size, the number of family members who are in college. So it's a formula, and it's used to be, way back when I went to college, way back long ago before the internet, that it was really kind of like, that's what you need to pay. So colleges would look at that and be like, all right, your EFC is $5,455. That's what you need to contribute to college. Now it's really looked at as an index, so that institutions can say, okay, based on where they are on this index, this is then the type of aid that they're eligible for and the need that they have. So it gives you a raw number, but again, don't look at that number and think, oh my gosh, I can't pay that. That's not what it's representing. It's putting you on this index from 0 to actually now it's up to, it's crazy. When I first started in admissions, it went up to $99,999, and now it's up to $999,999. So if you are a family that fills out the FAFSA, it comes back with a $999,999 EFC, that is pretty amazing. I don't know anyone that's anything near that. So again, information that's used for that calculation, we're looking at the assets, we're looking at, well, not we, the federal government, looking at the assets, the household size, number of students in school, students' income and assets, and business assets. If you are an independent student, so your parents aren't part of the equation, then that's what we're looking at. So we talked about that along the way. All right, so what do you do with your EFC? So the EFC is the estimated family contribution. That is going to be subtracted from the cost of attendance in order to determine your eligibility for need-based financial aid. So we're going to go through this to give you some examples of how this matters when you're looking at the different institutions that you could potentially attend. So first, we need to talk about what's the cost of attendance. So it's actually different than the tuition and fees. So often when you're looking at colleges, online in particular, you'll look at their tuition and fees. And a lot of state schools, like, so I work at a Minnesota State School, we price out by credit, and then we have fees per credit. So as students are looking at how many credits they're going to take, they multiply that times the credit number and get an estimate of their tuition for the year, their fees for the year. Private colleges are much more likely to do that in a, or schools that are looking at like residential component or full-time component. So Metro is a little bit more like a community college, where you're paying by credit, where a lot of the other schools are going to be like, hey, if you come and take 4 classes, it's going to be $20,000. Or if you take for the year, if you take 4 classes per year, per term, for example. So it kind of depends on how they're pricing out their tuition and fees. So when you're looking, you can, again, ask questions to say, is that per term? Is that per year? What if I take more credits? What if I take less? To get a real good sense of what the tuition and those fees are. Then you're going to want to look at room and board. So if you're going to live on campus, how much is it going to cost to live on campus? Is it required for you to live on campus? If it is, for how many years, so that you can get a sense of what that room is going to be. I have a daughter who is a junior in college, and as I've gone through and helped her figure out her financial aid, that varies because it depends on like which dorm she's living in, or is it an apartment style. And board, which is basically your meals, can vary depending on, do I want 15 meals a week or do I want 13 meals a week? Do I want some cash to use at the different places around campus? So the schools are going to give you an estimate of these different pieces, but it might vary a little bit depending on some of the choices that you make. Then if you are going to school outside of the metro, you might need to factor in transportation costs. So let's say you're going to school in New York City. Well, you might want to be able to come home a couple times. So you're going to factor in what the costs are to get you out to school, what the costs are to get back, and then if you're going to come back a couple of times, you can factor in that transportation cost. And then, of course, we've got books and supplies for those classes that we're taking. Some schools are doing rental programs. Other schools might have their books kind of tied into their fees. So they usually give you an estimate and kind of tell you what to expect there. And then there can be some miscellaneous expenses that you can estimate as well, and that the school would kind of help you with. So all of that combined is your cost of attendance. So when we look at the cost of attendance versus the direct costs are the things that are going to be billed right to you. Those are typically the tuition, fees, room, and board. So that's where the institution is saying, here's your bill. But again, in the cost of attendance, you might have then your books, your transportation, some other expenses that you need to cover. So when we look at your eligibility for need-based aid, going back to this, it's taking the cost of attendance minus the EFC to get your eligibility for need-based aid. So it's looking at the bigger total here for your eligibility, okay? So it's a little confusing, but just know that it's like, we're not thinking that your direct costs are the only costs for you to attend school, that we know that there are some indirect costs associated with the college experience. So what does that mean then as you're looking at some different institutions? So this is really interesting. Your estimated family contribution is the same regardless of what institution you attend. So if your EFC is $5,000, it's $5,000 if I go to a $77,000 a year school or a $5,000 a year school. So in this example, it's showing a public university four-year institution that's about $24,000 a year, a public that's $12,000, a private that's $40,000. So subtracting that EFC of $5,000 and giving you then the need that you have at the public, and see how that ranges from $7,000 to $35,000 depending on the institution that you're selecting. So this is where, again, it's a three-legged stool where it's the student and parent doing the FAFSA, it's the government saying, hey, are there some loans or grants that we can provide, and then the institution to say, hey, what do we have institutionally that we can assist with this need? So that's where you're going to have individualized awards for each of those institutions. But just know that this can be a little bit misleading, because you can think like, oh, I need $7,000 to go to this public, I'm going to go there. But this private school just gave me a scholarship for $35,000 a year. So all of a sudden, it's the same. So this is where you need to get your financial aid awards and compare them with this, the next information we're going to talk about in mind. So, all right, the types of aid. So in your financial aid award, you're going to have different types of aid listed. And this is where it can be confusing because sometimes colleges will name their merit-based aid like the Regents Scholarship or the Trustee Scholarship or the like, I Want Peace Scholarship, right? Like there's so many different scholarship names. And so what you're looking for is the word scholarship in it because a scholarship is something that you do not have to pay back. So a scholarship is money that's given to you to utilize for typically your tuition or fees or room and board. Typically tuition and fees is where institutions are focused. They can come from the college, they can come from private sources outside of the college, they can sometimes come from employers, from parent employers. So this merit-based aid is looking at, again, the scholarships that you might qualify for. If you have scholarships outside of the college that you're getting from, let's say you apply and get a Rotary Scholarship, for example, you can take that to any institution that you attend typically, and then apply that on top of the aid that the institution is providing to you. So we love merit-based aid. We love grants. So grants are also money that we don't have to pay back. So there are federal grants, there are state grants, and then there can be institutional grants. So this is kind of the order that we like to see things in. Then there are loans. There are federal loans and there are private loans. So we love to be able to have the government loans as the first loan that we procure, if I can say that word, that we access because it is the lower interest rate and we can have subsidized or unsubsidized loans. A subsidized loan says the government will pay the interest on that loan while you're in school. They determine that based on your EFC. An unsubsidized loan says that the interest is accruing while you're in school. And so, but you don't have to pay the balance until you're out of school. Private lenders typically have a higher interest rate, often require a cosigner, can require good credit. So private lenders can be a little bit more picky and difficult sometimes to get. And then student employment, we're going to talk a little bit about that too. So hang with me as we go through a few more slides here. So the scholarships, we really encourage you, you can start looking at scholarships, but take some time in your junior year, take some time to look at what you might qualify for and to apply for scholarships. So they're typically based on merit, not need. So they're looking at, do you have a special skill? Like, are you a musician? Are you an artist? Do you have really good grades? Are you a good writer? Do you have a particular interest that maybe aligns with the scholarship award? Like if you're interested in social justice or if you're interested in racial equity, there might be scholarships that you can apply for that really connect with your areas of interest and your passion. So typically they're asking for a second type of application, so not your college application, but a scholarship application. However, you can use, if you're writing essays for your college application, go ahead and use those, tweak those to use those for your scholarship application and vice versa. So look on the web, look at the colleges that you're applying to. There might be some specific scholarships there, again, for talent, or maybe there's an honor scholarship or president's scholarship if you have a GPA that matches their criteria. Within the community, you can look church, synagogues, religious affiliation, civic business organizations. You might have, scholarships that are available where you work. Sometimes some of the, like McDonald's and Subway and Walmart have scholarships that are available. I'm pretty sure, at least, I believe I've heard that. Your parent employer might have some scholarships, and then certainly check with your school resources as well. So scholarships, avoid scholarship scams. So legitimate scholarships never charge fees. So if they're like, hey, fill this out for $50 and you can maybe win a $50,000 scholarship, don't do it. They're basically collecting your money. Also, don't fall for guarantees of claims that someone has information you can't get elsewhere. So sometimes people will be like, oh, come to my workshop for $1,000 and I guarantee you'll get a $2,000 minimum return when you apply to college. Those are folks that are trying to take advantage of the situation where you've got financial aid, admissions professionals that are here to help you for free navigate all of these different systems. So don't pay for services that you can more easily access right with the colleges that you're looking at or within your own high school. So grants, we won't go into a lot of detail here, but just to give you a sense of how the grants work, there's a Pell Grant, there's a federal SEOG grant that's given by the school. The Pell Grant is determined by the government, the Pell Grant is determined by the institution, no, by the school, let me go back. The Pell is a federal grant. The federal SEOG is also federal, but it's determined by the institution. The Minnesota State Grant is determined for Minnesota residents. So with the Minnesota State Grant, if you are a resident in Minnesota and you attend a Minnesota institution, then you can use your Minnesota State Grant. When I was working at Augustana, which was located outside of Minnesota, students couldn't take their Minnesota State Grant with them to attend in South Dakota. So your Minnesota State Grant is for you attending a Minnesota State institution. And then the institutional funds are going to vary. So some colleges have really robust scholarships. Grinnell, which is a school in Iowa, just announced that they're not going to have any loans in their need-based aid this year, that they're going to provide all grants, which is amazing. They also have like a $2 billion endowment, so they're able to do that. But typically, you know, the institution, again, as I started at the beginning, we're trying to figure out ways to spread the limited resources that we have. So we don't have the money trees in our backyard where we're like, awesome, we're going to give money to every single student, whatever they need. So we have to figure out how can we give as many students as much as we possibly can in an equitable and ethical way. All right, so we're getting close. As I mentioned, we've got the Minnesota DREAM Act. So this is for undocumented students. They're eligible to attend Minnesota public institutions at the in-state tuition. And there's also a state grant program that you are eligible for. So if you are interested and this is the criteria that matches you, then you're going to apply for your aid through the Minnesota Office of Higher Education. So you don't have to do the FAFSA, you do this process with the Minnesota Office of Higher Education, asking for some similar information, but you're not going to submit the FAFSA because there's parts in there that don't make sense for you. So you're applying through the state instead. So the requirements for that are listed here. You need to attend Minnesota high school for at least 3 years, graduate from that school or get a GED, comply with selective service requirements, and then apply for federal lawful immigration status once a federal process is in place. So lots of movement on that even this week with the DREAM Act and the courts. So we'll see how this all plays out as it continues to play out. But for now, just know that you have a great advocate also in the Office of Higher Education with Megan Flores, who leads the state grant program. She's great, she's very accessible, and really wants to make sure that students have their questions answered in this process. All right, so we also mentioned that your financial aid award can include student employment or work study. So the good things about work study is that it's based on campus, typically pretty flexible. The earnings are paid to the student. Now sometimes, and I want to just point this out, in your financial aid award, they'll have work study listed there as one of the ways to pay for school. Let's say they put $2,000 on your award. Well, that money has to be earned, so you have to put in the hours to earn that money. That money is then paid to the student. So unless the student is got an agreement with the student accounts office to say, hey, take half or all of my earnings and apply that towards that $2,000 that are in my financial aid award, that $2,000 isn't going to get paid separately. Does that make sense? You have to earn it and then you have to pay it back towards that statement. So families have to think about that in your financial aid award. Am I going to have my son or daughter work and earn that money for living expenses while they're in school and help pay for books and you know, miscellaneous fees and other things? Or am I going to have them work and pay for part or all of that amount that is listed on my financial aid award? Because it's going to have to come from somewhere. So that $2,000, again, if it's on the award, needs to be paid either from the work study experience itself or in a different way to cover those costs. So sometimes that can be a little bit misleading, where it's like, well, I got the award, why isn't it showing up? It's like, well, you have to put in the hours and earn those dollars. So sometimes we think about, okay, what's my award without work study so that I can pay for school, and then work study can be used for those living expenses, miscellaneous expenses throughout the academic year. Another way to do that too, just as an aside, is sometimes like students will work in the summer and kind of pay or save as they go for their living expenses during the year, or they use that summer to pay their student work fee or amount towards their bill, and then they use the money that they're earning while they're in school to live on. So a couple ways to kind of finance that or flex that. So I have a little nod down here to the TCRAR, which is the Twin Cities Regional Admissions Representative Group, which has been really helpful in pulling a lot of this information together. It's a group that I was a part of when I was at Augustana, so I just want to lift them up. But with special circumstances, as we said, this is a tough year, right? So many things have changed from January to now. As we think about change of income, people have lost jobs, have put in more hours, have gotten different jobs. Other things can happen, right? Death, divorce, separation. There can be unexpected out-of-pocket medical expenses. We know that COVID is obviously impacting large numbers of people, and that could really impact the family budget when it comes to medical expenses. One-time income, this could be more of a positive when you get an inheritance or a severance package. So thinking about the ability to pay actually has changed because I've got an influx of money. Elementary and secondary school tuition fees are considered special circumstances, and parents in college are considered special circumstances. Again, not asked on the FAFSA, but something that the institution can take into consideration as they are coming up with a financial aid award. So typically you're going to want to work with the financial aid office to say, hey, some things have changed from 2019 when I filled out the FAFSA, and so I need to update you on my circumstances so that this financial aid award can be up to date considering everything that I've experienced in this past year. So as you narrow down your college choice, you might want to have this conversation with 2 or 3 different institutions that you're really serious about, so they can reevaluate your award and see if there's additional dollars that can support you, if things have changed. A couple more things really quick. Tuition reciprocity, just so you know that Minnesota residents that attend public institutions in the neighboring states have a rate similar to the Minnesota rate. So you'll hear of Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota, Manitoba, like, oh, I want to go to NDSU because it's the same price as it would be if I lived in North Dakota or Wisconsin. So that's really helpful that we have that exchange, because out of state is typically quite a bit more than the in-state tuition. So having that reciprocity helps. It also helps when we can't take that Minnesota State grant with us, that reciprocity really brings that price down. So hopefully it's still an affordable option. There are some Midwest Student Exchange options outside of the reciprocity. If you're interested in institutions in these areas, you can contact the Office of Higher Education to learn more. All right, so this is just more of a quick calendar of what you should be doing when. So for seniors, this is, we're kind of fall into winter right now. So thinking about that FAFSA, getting your student aid report, making sure that you've already got your FSID. So if you haven't done those things, there's still plenty of time to do it. Don't feel like, oh my gosh, but you're going to want to do that as soon as possible, kind of before the end of the calendar year or early into 2021, so that you just have everything in place as the financial aid awards are going to start to be coming out, so you can make informed decisions. So again, this is going to be shared. So you'll have this as kind of a checklist for the fall, winter, and then spring and summer as you think about transitioning into your college campus. So also, again, will be provided, but there's some links here for additional information with the College Board, FastWeb, finaid.org, and the Minnesota Office of Higher Ed. So with that, I'm at the last slide. Woo! So just about an hour. So thank you for hanging in there with me. I hope that it was helpful, but if you've got questions, you can raise your hand. You can unmute, maybe raise your hand first, just because then we can make sure that we just get one question at a time. But happy to answer any questions that you might have. And then my contact information is here. I'll just share. It's easier to get a hold of me by email, just because we're all working remotely, but I'm happy to be a resource if you've got questions. I can hopefully answer. I probably know someone that can. So questions. Let's see if anyone raised their hand. I know that was a lot to take in. So yes, Spencer. Who's not Spencer?
I have a question.
I have a question. My name is Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie.
What is the realm for the junior class? What time should we not do anything till next October?
Yeah, great question. So I would, if you have not already, I would go ahead and take care of that FSA, the financial aid, basically your ID.
Okay.
Time this year. Just, it's good to get it done. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it's just one of those things you can check off your list. And then also you can start looking at scholarships. They probably won't start applying for them yet, but you can at least start narrowing down which ones that be a good fit for spending some time actually doing the application.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Jackie, actually, we're going to have to unmute you. Let's see.
Oh.
Did you have a question?
Yes, I got a question. What happened if my daughter already applied for FAFSA? How long it takes to get an answer or notice she qualified?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you submit the FAFSA, it should be right away that you get a notification that it's complete. So if you haven't got a notification that it's complete, you might want to go back in and see if there's anything missing. Just because if you're not getting that confirmation page, then it might be that there's still something that you're waiting for. The challenge, or maybe the confusion that can happen when you get your FAFSA, it's telling you your information. The institution, though, still has to get that information, and then they have to come up with a financial aid award for you. So that can take a little bit longer depending on the institution and when they do the financial aid awards. So some schools do them right away when they get their financial aid. When they get the FAFSA results, they're starting to send out financial aid awards, even like right now or early in January, February. Other schools are saying, we're going to wait. We still don't know what our tuition is for next year. We're going to have to wait and see. So if your daughter has a couple of schools in mind or a few schools in mind, have her ask them, when can I expect to see my financial aid award? Because if FAFSA has been submitted, they should be able to tell you. And then just keep in mind that May 1st is typically the day that we want students to make a decision. So there's time once you get those financial aid awards to compare them, to get a sense of what is a scholarship, what is a grant, what is money I have to pay back, what's the gap, so that you really are informed about what your out-of-pocket costs are.
Okay. In case my daughter qualified for FAFSA, she's still available, or she can apply for another scholarships?
Yeah, so the FAFSA basically shows your eligibility for loans and grants, but then scholarships are a second piece, which are really good to start looking at scholarship opportunities, either through the websites that we posted, through the school, through community contacts and organizations. So those are separate, and she'll want to spend some time looking to see what ones she might qualify for.
FAFSA, we need to review every year, or that's for the whole college? Or we got to reapply every year on FAFSA?
Yeah, so the FAFSA you do have to fill out every year. So they're looking, because we fill out the taxes every year, they're like, oh,
I see.
Mm-hmm. So the renewal process usually is a little bit faster, just because you've done it, you kind of know what to expect, and a lot of that information ends up being the same as far as the number of people in your household and things. But it's kind of going through that first time takes a little bit longer. Janelle has some ideas too about some scholarships.
The scholarship piece, I was going to just say this would be a good time for me just to let everybody know I've mentioned this lots in our class meetings, but for parents and guardians, all local scholarships, at the beginning of March, students will get a Google form to fill out. That's the application for that. And they just fill out one application for all of our local scholarships. And so that will be coming up end of February, beginning of March time, where they will do that. And then they will get awarded those scholarships in May. So just keep that in mind. End of February, beginning of March to be looking for that. Just one application for all of our local scholarships. Last year, we gave close to $280,000 worth of local scholarships. So it's a good opportunity for students to get some additional scholarships that way too. So just know that piece.
Okay,
Yeah.
my last, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, that's just a great, yeah, make sure every student fills that out because every dollar counts, right?
Right.
Time well spent, yes.
Okay, I really appreciated all information you guys give us. And my last question is, sometimes it's kind of really difficult because there's a lot of questions and to fill, all the applications. And sometimes we don't understand really well. So it's anybody can help us in the school or in library or somebody available to help us to help my daughter to fill it out, all those questions.
Yeah, yeah. So there are
Specific to our school. Now, typically, that's something that I meet with students individually and help them with, and we have an appointment and all that. Since we're not in school right now, I can do that with students over Zoom. So just have your daughter email me. I'm Miss Gillis, the 12th grade dean, and we can set up a time to go through specific questions or helping with filling it out, whatever they need help with. Just have them get a hold of me and we can set up an appointment.
Okay, can I give your name again? And
Yep, it's Janelle, Janelle. Last name is Gillis, Gillis. And my email is gillisj, and then the long at coleheights.k12.mn.us. But yeah, just have your daughter email me and we can set up a time that we can meet, and I can get her some help.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for answering my questions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, okay.
Yeah, and just know that it's very, very common to feel very overwhelmed the first time you fill out the FAFSA. So it's good that you ask for help. Looks like we have a hand raised. Let's see, I will unmute. Is it Dega? Is that how you pronounce your name?
Hi, yes, it is.
Hi.
My question is this. Let's say I have an inquisitive teenager that wants to apply to all 10 colleges, but then decides, no, I don't want this college. Could he go back and remove one of the colleges? And that was my question.
Yeah, great question. Yes, yeah. So you can change that list. The other thing that you can do is, like, let's say, you've kind of come to the end, and you can basically send a copy of that student aid report to the institution, and then they can pull it from FAFSA. So the institution does have options. So if your student is like in there all the time, changing things up or switching colleges, the institution has other ways to access the financial aid award. But it is, I know, and it's very common to have students look at lots and lots of colleges, which is great. But we do recommend, just from the admissions kind of lens, that students start to narrow down and apply to maybe, 6 colleges, I would say kind of at the most, just because once you start applying, and 6 is a kind of arbitrary number, but that's like a nice number for me. But I just like, once you start applying, it's a lot of information that you're going to get from the college around, like, here's the next step and do this and don't forget about that and come to this and attend this event. So it can just feel pretty overwhelming when you when students are applying to 10, 15 colleges for them to really have the time and the energy to explore each of those schools can be hard. So that's where we try in the junior year. Now, again, this is a crazy year, right? This is not the typical year where you could do some visits, but the nice thing that's happened with COVID is that colleges are doing a lot more virtual visits, a lot of virtual open houses, campus tours. So it is a way to do some visits without having to leave the comfort of your home and maybe start to kind of narrow down that list without having to do a lot of travel. So I know it's not ideal. We'd love to be on those college campuses to kind of get a sense of fit and feel. The hope is that, you know, by spring, that's something that can start to happen, or summer. And some colleges are still doing very, very small groups or individual visits. So that might still be an option, but do take advantage of the virtual spaces that are available just to explore. So I know you didn't ask that, but so
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anything else? Let's see. How about Aldo? Or there's Aldo.
My question isn't really related to the FAFSA, but I was wondering, Ms. Gillis, if this the Zoom recording will be posted later.
Yes, it will be. I don't know at what point. It depends on how long it takes to convert. And we have somebody that puts them on the YouTube piece. But yes, sometime this week it will be up that students will be able to access and parents will be able to access later.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And is it Hanan? Hanan?
It's Hanan.
Hanan, hello.
Hi. Okay, so I have a quick question. So would you say I want to talk to Ms. Gillis about the scholarship. So do you think that only seniors should apply, or also juniors should be taking advantage of the scholarships and also start kind of applying, or at least just looking at them in your junior year? Or should we just all wait until senior year?
So for the local scholarships, the only people that can apply are seniors. So you won't be able to apply for those. But if you are a junior, you certainly can go to some of those search engines and do some searching for scholarships. The majority of scholarships, whether they're local or national ones, are going to be for seniors, but there are some that every once in a while are for underclassmen that you can apply for right now. But I think scholarship-wise, your focus, if you're not a senior right now, should just be kind of digging around and seeing what there is, so that when you get to your senior year, you'd have some ideas of what's available out there. There's not going to be a ton that you're going to be able to actually apply for right now. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This is one more thing for your senior year.
Mm-hmm.
I know, it's so much to do in my senior year.
Yes, I know. That's where some of the kind of college search piece can be done in the junior year to start narrowing down. I always encourage students to have conversations with parents or guardians about what's important in the college search process. Is, how big of a school, what's the kind of financial commitment that can be made from parents, so that you can start, because there are so many schools, right? There's over 3,000 colleges to choose from in the country. And so how do you narrow that down? So for example, with my daughter, she did not want to go to school in the Twin Cities, but she didn't want to go more than 4 hours away. So that was really easy. We could kind of put a circle around the Twin Cities and then kind of build out. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, we can look at Winona State, which is where she is, or we could look at some schools in Wisconsin. We could look at some private schools and, St. Olaf and Gustavus. It just gave us a little bit more of a narrowed search. But, it took her a little while to really understand what she wanted. And so when those conversations can happen earlier, you can start to narrow it down. Sports, are they important? Do you want to live on campus? Do you want to be able to commute? Do you want to be able to work? All those kinds of factors that you need to take into consideration that helps to narrow down what schools you want to look at and take seriously. Any other?
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Simon, what's your question?
Hi, I was wondering about, like, you just mentioned like college options for, like, is there any good like website or resources that get suggested to like where you could start or get like a big database of school options?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Ms. Gillis take that.
Yes, yeah, there is. Actually, Simon, I can, there's one on College Board that is a really good one. I'm blanking on the actual site of it, but it basically, what it does is it starts narrowing down. It asks you the questions. Sometimes you're not sure what questions to ask yourself, but it starts asking you questions about what size of school do you want to go to, where do you want to go to. You can pick specific states, or you can do a region of the United States. So that website that she popped up right there, the collegeboard.org, if you go to that and just put that you want to do a college search in there, it's like Big Future. You can definitely do a really good, and you can save, you can create an account and then save it so that you could go back, or you could do it more than once and kind of see if you get the same results. But it goes into like what type of things are important on campus for you to have. Like I said, the size of the school, do you want to do public or private? And it'll start narrowing it down so that you can look at some of those schools and see, you know, and then it'll ask you too, like, do you know what you want to major in, or areas you're looking at? And so because it's so overwhelming with all the things to do, it does the questioning for you. So it brings it down for you. So that is definitely one that I would recommend. I love using it with students. And I will email you the exact website to that, Simon. And then for everybody else that's on here, I will post that on the 12th grade Google homepage and the post-high school planning homepage, just so you have that in case you're looking or thinking that you want to do something with that too.
Okay, thank you. I'll check it out.
Yeah, you can have some fun with it, right? See what pops up. And it's fun, like when you do that without having any kind of, you know, like preconceived expectations or notions about what the answers are. You might find an institution that's like, oh my gosh, I've never even heard of this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I worked for College Possible for a little while and found out that there were like 29 private colleges in Iowa. I had no idea. It's like, I haven't heard of half of them. And they're within, you know, 5-6 hours. So, and some really great opportunities for our students. So yeah, it's fun to kind of explore and see where it might lead you. All right, we have, is it Yulisa?
Yeah, hi.
Awesome, hi.
I had a question for Ms. Gillis about the post-high school planning Google Classroom code.
Yes. Ooh, it is 7 ULT, those are all lowercase letters, 6, and then XU, and those are both lowercase. So all lowercase letters, I'll say it one more time, 7 ULT 6 XU. And that's for anybody in the high school that wants to, even parents if they want to join, but anything with stuff for after high school gets posted there. So it's a really good resource. It's got a ton of stuff there.
Sorry, Ms. Gillis, could you email that to the parents too?
Yeah, I can send it out as an email. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
What, your child doesn't give everything to you?
No, he hides everything.
Neither does mine. I have a junior in high school too. I don't like. You need to tell me some of these things so I can pay or I can get you registered. Yes. So, Oh goodness. So anything else before we let you go for the rest of the night? This has been really fun. I hope that it's been helpful. Like I said, I know it's really overwhelming as well. So feel free to contact me with any question afterwards, or the resources that are listed. We're here to help. You know, I love working with students and helping them kind of realize that their dreams are obtainable and within reach, and that we have so many wonderful colleges and universities within the Twin Cities and within the state and the region for them to consider, with a variety of programs, a variety of price points, so that hopefully you can find one that meets your needs and is at a cost that is manageable. I used to, when I was at Augsburg, I worked there for a long time, and I would tell students, if you can graduate from college with a debt that's similar to buying a car when you graduate from college, so not a like fancy schmancy Mercedes, but like a $20,000, $25,000 car, you can pay off that school debt in a in a manageable way, and you'll get so much return on the investment that you're making in yourself. So, loans are not always the best option, but sometimes they make it possible for us to be able to pursue options, and then as long as it's a reasonable expectation to pay those back. I always like to talk to families about, we do not want to burden our kids or our parents, because you can take out parent loans, with debt that's so insurmountable that it keeps you from being able to retire, being able to feel comfortable with your financial situation. There are a lot of options that you can consider, so maybe that doesn't have to be the one that you pick. So anything else? Ms. Gillis, I always say your first name, and then I realize I should call you by your professional name.
Okay, that's okay. No, I just appreciate, thank you so much, Carrie, for all of your info. Everybody will get this converted and posted, so if you want to refer back to it. But Carrie has been willing, I don't know how many years now, it's been a couple years in a row here that she's come, and she loves to help in any way. So thank you so much again for this. And anybody else that's on here, if you've got questions even too that you think of that you want, like she said, to email her, but you can also email me. It's kind of a cool process to figure out what you want to do after high school, but it can be overwhelming too. So make sure you're reaching out to people and getting help so that you don't feel so overwhelmed with it and not look into things. So I think we're set for tonight, everybody. Thanks so much for coming, and we will hopefully see people other than on Zoom soon. Take care, everybody.
Excellent. Thank you.